Okay, next we'll take a look at the files that are used to boot the most common operating systems. One file that is used, if it's present, is the autoexec.bat file. The autoexec.bat file can be used to configure both DOS as well as all Windows systems. It will be read by the system if it's present, and the commands will then be used to configure the system. If the autoexec.bat file is not present, the system will start up just fine without it. But there are some files that Windows absolutely requires in order to get started. These are called initialization files, and the two that are required in order to get started are the system.ini file, which contains hardware settings and multitasking options, and win.ini, which contains information about file associations to applications. Without these two files, Windows will not start. Other files that can be used to further configure Windows are the progman.ini, which contains information about program manager groups, control.ini, which contains information about the user's desktop like color selections and wallpaper and screensavers, and then mouse.ini, which contains the settings for the mouse. Another file that is absolutely required in order to start both DOS as well as Windows is the ms-dos.sys file. The ms-dos.sys file is actually a different file in Windows than it is in DOS, even though it has the same name. And the ms-dos.sys file in Windows is used for further configuration. The settings that we can set in the ms-dos.sys file include windir, which is the location of the Windows 9X directory, winbootdir, which is the location of the Windows 9X startup files, host winboot drive, which is the drive where Windows is located, and then boot GUI, or boot graphical user interface, which is a selection of either going to Windows or booting to a command prompt and then choosing to go to Windows when we want to. To start Windows 98, there's a very minor change which makes a big difference. In booting with Windows 98, BIOS first runs the power on self-test, just as normal, but then it loads a small DOS core. The DOS core will then load Windows 98. This is a minor change in what happens, but it makes a huge difference in the speed of which Windows 98 can start up, considering all the things that Windows 98 starts. Okay, so now that we know the major players to boot the most common operating systems, in the next section we'll look at how software manages hardware resources.